Now, of course, I think freelancing is a fantastic way to have your career set up. But there are some downsides to freelancing that you should be aware of. Some of those you can mitigate against, and others perhaps less so. Now, I'll link to another video, but I talked a little bit about the best thing with freelancing for me is freedom. But what you can easily get into a situation is where you lose the freedom of freelancing if you don't create and protect that. So, that, as I say, that video goes into more detail. But one of the downsides can be a lack of freedom if you pick up some of the wrong clients, if you start to get into agreements that are maybe demanding of your time at specific times, particularly. So, you're giving up sections of time in the day to work on that client account. Over time, that can become quite onerous and not giving you the freedom that perhaps one of the key reasons why you went freelance in the first place. The other thing about it as well is that you can get into a bit of monotony with freelancing in the sense that if you're a specialist in your particular service that you provide, let's say you are a social media marketer using Instagram, that if you're delivering that for clients time in, time out, it can get a little bit repetitive and there is a potentially a lack of progression. Now, of course, there'll always be little nuances of updates on the platform and how you can do better content, etc. But once you're kind of into the flow of that, there can be this monotony of freelancing. Now, one of the other areas, which is a challenge, and again, I'll link to another video which goes into more detail, is the loneliness of freelancing. And this is sometimes something people don't often think about, particularly if they've come out of a bustling and busy team environment working for another company and they've gone to work for themselves as a freelancer. It can be a lonely environment. You are essentially working alone. Of course, you're going to be working with your clients, but often that could be kind of a slightly different dynamic than you would have with some of your former colleagues. And even if you're collaborating with other freelancers, that isn't quite the same as having direct teammates. Now, again, in the other video, I do mention some of the ways you can mitigate that. So do go ahead and watch that if that's a challenge that you have come across. The other challenge you can get into is on the financial side of things. Now, you will go from having very simple setup as an employee where you get paid through PAYE if you're in the UK and they'll take care of your pension and all those sorts of things. Now, one of the downsides is all that responsibility now comes over to you. So you have to manage your money a lot better. You maybe have to start chasing invoices. You'll be managing your accounts. You've got to look after your tax implications and all those sorts of things. So unless you enjoy that side of the freelancing with accounting and sort of stuff, I certainly know that I don't particularly love it. That can be one of the downsides, which can take up some of your time. Tied into that is some of the administration work that you do as well, depending on the role you may have had in a company. If you were in a sizable business where you were perhaps a manager and you had some colleagues that you could either delegate to, or you had a support staff that would support with certain tasks, again, all of that goes out of the window as soon as you decide to go freelance. So you're going to be responsible for all the administration for your business. So if something goes wrong with your server or your emails, there is no IT department to turn to. Essentially, you are the IT department. So all those elements that maybe you take for granted as a employee of a business, they're all going to come over to yourself and you're going to have to learn. Now, for me, that's an opportunity I find to actually learn how to manage these things, and it gives you some good experience. But you could class that as a potential downside of freelancing as well. So there's just a few little pointers about some of the things you should be aware of when you go freelance. As I say, I'll link to videos that are relevant for the particular points to go in more detail, but you can absolutely mitigate some of these to give you the best opportunity. But it's always important to go into a new situation with your eyes wide open. So there's a few things there you might want to think about as you're starting on your freelance career.